Let's talk about Sam Alito. The back in the day when Scalia was still alive, we used to call Alito Scalito, and one of the hallmarks of Anthony Scalia was that he, like, particularly towards the end of his career, was writing his opinions more or less. It sounded like he cribbed them from right wing talk radio.
Yes.
And it seems like Scalito is really worthy of the name at this point.
I would say that Sam Alito has always been worse than Scalia. You know, Scalia had a period from like the 80s through the sort of mid-aughts when he had this strong judicial philosophy. It included things like deference to administrative agencies, by the way, that was coherent and didn't necessarily exclusively toe the Republican line and made him an interesting jurist to watch. I think starting around 2005, he started to sort of lose his mind or get brain poisoned by Fox News, and late stage Scalia was indeed an embarrassment. But he had that phase where he had a real philosophy. Sam Alito has never had a real judicial philosophy. His only philosophy is whatever Republicans want to do, they get to do. Whatever Democrats get to do, they can't. He has always been a partisan hack. I mean, by far, he has the most partisan voting record. And so I'm not surprised that he and his wife, Martha Ann, who, by the way, is a big anti-abortion advocate and very big in the sort of conservative Catholic circles in DC that the two of them run in. I wasn't surprised that they did this flag upside down thing. I think they were entirely aware that it was a symbol for Stop the Steal. I think both of them absolutely believe the 2020 election is stolen. And I think there's a direct link between those personal views at home and Alito's own judicial writings and decisions, which are consistently attempting to call into question the integrity of the 2020 election and will probably try to call into question the 2024 election as well.
I mean, you read the New York Times article on it, and it's unambiguous, as you say, Mark, right? This is involving a dispute that he allegedly had with one of his neighbors because they had a sign that was critical of Trump that had an expletive on it, and then he responded in this manner. But like Dick Durbin is now saying, NBC News reporting today, that they're not going to take up the matter and look into it as in the Senate Judiciary Committee. Like, why does it stop here? Is it politicking? Is it an election year? Because there should have been even more robust probes into Clarence Thomas, and now we're not even going to look into this, even though we're talking about how democracy's on the ballot. It's pretty bad politics at a base level.
And I don't even need to ask, like, what if Ketanji Brown Jackson's husband did something similar to this? Like, Republicans would actively march to her house with pitchforks. There's a huge double standard here. And I think it shows that even well over a year out from the Clarence Thomas bombshell reporting by ProPublica about his billionaire benefactors and donors and all that stuff, Senate Democrats are still not playing hardball at all when it comes to the judiciary. You know,
they're not even playing softball.
They're not even playing. They're not playing. They're not playing at all. They just packed up their toys and went home. They are scared of these justices for no good reason, right? Like, the Democratic base is not exactly a fan of Justice Alito or Justice Thomas, but senators are for some reason terrified of the repercussions of, say, calling them before the Senate Judiciary Committee, asking a few basic questions like, do you think the 2020 election was stolen? Or did you accept a huge amount of money to rule in favor of your best friend? They are, I think, not up for the job. They are not the men and women for this moment. It's specifically the men, people like Dick Durbin, I'll say. It's hopefully a lesson for future Democratic Senates, if they exist. Don't put moderate squishes who are into conciliation in charge of the Senate Judiciary Committee. This is about the worst place that Dick Durbin could be in this Senate. If someone like Sheldon Whitehouse were in that seat, it would be a lot different. But Democrats decided they wanted to be conciliatory. And so this is the path they've chosen, the path of doing nothing.
We should also say that there was a report yesterday that that Alito sold Bud Light stock as in the wake of the I guess the hullabaloo over Dylan Mulvaney. He sold his stock and bought Coors or something, like,
yes. By the way, he should not
amazing.
be owning individual stocks, owning, selling, whatever.
Right.
Like he
it's
and Roberts are the
unbelievable.
only ones who do that. The other ones have it in a blind trust. He and Roberts are the only ones who can be like, yes, Bud Light, they have a transgender spokeswoman on Instagram. Time for me to sell off this stock and buy some Coors. Like the fact that that's even possible for a Supreme Court justice is in itself pretty insane.
It is amazing to me that we're not having hearings on this. I mean, it is so obvious from the reporting, and the hearings should just be like, we're just going to invite the reporters. We will invite the justices to come and defend themselves if they want. They won't come, but let's hear this story, because Clarence Thomas clearly basically said, I'm going to quit the court unless I get some type of financial support. And then all of a sudden, he's introduced by Leonard Leo to a billionaire, and now they're best friends. That's a great story.
It's so real.
And I mean, I
romantic.
imagine, the Alito is probably not best friends with the billionaire, but there's a couple of billionaires who like him and, subsidizing his flagpoles or whatever it is. This is just, it is crazy how the Democrats, Dick Durbin in particular, and Leahy was the same, are refusing to acknowledge what's going on there. It's almost like it is the highest form of denial that I think could possibly exist. I mean, they're on the Judiciary Committee. That's what their job is.
I think that the dream of an impartial court that majestically dispenses equal justice to all is a narcotic, and these guys are still addicted to it. After all these years, they're still addicted, and it's gonna take something even bigger to shatter that. Honestly, if Bush v. Gore didn't shatter it, I don't really know what was. Maybe we just have to wait for a new generation that doesn't have the scales on their eyes. But I truly think that these senators have just grown up and built their identities around this notion that the Supreme Court is so majestic it can't be touched. And even as it corrupts itself and falls into disarray and shame, these senators are essentially propping it up through their inactions rather than launching real investigations that they have power under law to do.
I don't know what else there is to say, but I'd like 3 more Ketanji Brown Jacksons, please. And if we've got to expand the court, we expand the court. But is there anything, I mean, outside of a court expansion, the Congress theoretically, I mean, I highly unlikely, but could begin to narrow its jurisdiction.
And should. And, actually, Justice Jackson, you mentioned her. She's been writing about this since she joined the court. She's very, very strongly in favor of jurisdiction stripping, at least as a legal matter. She has written, when Congress tells the Article 3 judiciary to butt out, we have to. That is our obligation. And I think she's sending a not very subtle signal to Congress. Like, you think that the judiciary is overstepping? We'll start adding to your laws. By the way, the courts have no role in, assessing this law's legality or striking it down or intervening or whatever. I don't know whether the full court would accept that, but it's in the Constitution that Congress can jurisdiction strip. Like, it's right there. Constitution doesn't say we only have 9 justices, doesn't put a number on it. It does say that Congress can limit the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. So it seems like it's maybe worth a shot if Congress ever gets its act together to pass major legislation again that's vulnerable to Republican attack at the Supreme Court. There has to be a line in there saying, by the way, the Supreme Court has no jurisdiction to review the constitutionality of this law. Otherwise, that law will be toast.
Mark Joseph Stern, senior writer at Slate. We'll put a link to your pieces on the cases we've talked about today. As always, a real pleasure. Thanks so much for your time today.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Sam. Thanks, Emma.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Mark.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.